The actions of the West on the current events around the world is unveiling their true colors and true motives for all to see. More and more citizens of the Western countries are being awakened to the truths and started to realize that they are being misled. The power of the Western social media has clouded the truths and painted black into white, and white into black, wherein everything is cast with a veil, but the war in Ukraine and their actions regarding Gaza and the Palestinians are slowly removing that veil.
And the only reason Palestinians and the Palestine question is so prominent in the U.S. as a talk in a certain way is because of world public opinion and because of how people feel about this, and because there is a strong push to recognize the human rights of Palestinians, because they don't have a state, because they don't have a nation, they don't have self-determination, they don't have any rights under international law right now. They should have them, but they are not respected to any degree. So that's why the United States has to talk in a certain way, but they don't have to talk like that around Syrians. They don't have to talk like that about Iranians or Hezbollah or anybody else. They don't have to talk like that because they can kind of fight in the theater of war in a way that is more accepted. So this is the quandary that the United States finds itself in. This situation in Gaza is likely not to end, but I do think we see in this unexpected truce that there is a possibility this could wind down. The uglier and uglier this gets overall, the United States and the rest of the collective West, they can't allow this situation to turn into what it already looks like it's turning into at such a rapid manner without huge consequences, not just in terms of their own public relations and how they look, but also in terms of the fallout regionally and globally. Because the more isolated Israel becomes because of this, the more isolated the United States and, of course, the rest of the collective West, if it has any credibility anymore, is also likely to become.
Yeah, well, I think the West is isolating itself. It began doing that even before the conflict in Ukraine, but the conflict in Ukraine has really accelerated this isolation, and it's ironic because they're becoming more isolated while at the same time trying to isolate Russia, China, and now a growing list of nations that are not going along with their dictates. And you made a lot of good points, and I just want to touch on a couple of them. The idea of this ceasefire kind of breaking the momentum from this growing outrage that we see globally. They know people have a limited attention span. If they could drag out this ceasefire for a while, maybe get, again, break the momentum that we see building up in opposition to Israel, and also the realization that the U.S. is enabling this. Without the U.S., this could not even happen. And as you point out, the U.S. wants to appear to be acting diplomatically, all while they bend over backwards to send weapons to Israel, allocate money and additional weapons and ammunition to continue sending them, even while saying, "Oh, Israel, please show some restraint," while pouring oil onto the fire, essentially. And the other point, and this is a point that I've been trying to make, just as the U.S. used the conflict in Ukraine to consolidate control over Europe, to completely cut Europe off from cooperation with Russia, and also to a certain extent China, and really accelerate these dependencies Europe has on, or enlarge the dependencies Europe has on the United States. I think they're trying to do the same thing with this conflict in Gaza, in the Middle East or West Asia. And think about Saudi Arabia, how they're kind of sneaking out from under U.S. hegemony. Turkey has been doing this very slow pivot, and many other countries in the region have been doing this. Maybe they think that this conflict can create divisions and instability, as you were saying, and this could give them opportunities to consolidate control over this region, just as they did in Europe with the conflict in Ukraine. One last thing that you've said that I think is really essential for people to understand: do not look at these conflicts in silos. They're not isolated. Don't become overly obsessed with individual ideologies that are real and toxic, but are being used to get people dragged into the conflict. It's not the ideology driving the conflict. The ideology is being used to pull people into it and keep it going. The actual the actual purpose pushing all of this is U.S. hegemony. And so we see Zionism, for example, in Israel. This is a real thing. It exists. No one denies that. But people focus entirely too much on just that, and they don't look beyond what is behind it and what is using it. And if you look at Ukraine, it's not Zionism, it's Nazism, but it's very similar when you really look at the root of it. And if you look at, and we're going to talk about Asia next, the mentality of the opposition groups the U.S. cultivates here in Asia. I'm based in Asia. The idea that if you speak English and you think and act like a Westerner, you're superior to everyone else. And all of these people and their cultures are all backwards and ridiculous and need to be washed clean from the region. That's how they think. And how is that different than Nazism or Zionism? That is if you look at the common denominator, it's U.S. support. And that is how the U.S. creates cadres in every single location on Earth to advance their interests in each one of these places. And then when you zoom out, you see that they're trying to consolidate control over the entire planet. And it's empire. It's modern day empire, and that's how they do it. So I think we did a good job in about half an hour covering Ukraine, Gaza, and I think we're getting very deep into the actual cause driving all of this, and we see how they're connected. You recently took a trip to Asia, and I say all the time, and Angelo, who's on often, he always says, people need to go, especially to China. Go to China, see China for yourself. You're not going to be able to get a grip on what is going on there by looking at the Western media, for sure. And I would say the same goes for, say, Thailand, where I'm based. Westerners have so many knuckle-dragging, ignorance, misconceptions about Thailand. It's all because of the Western media and Hollywood depicting it a certain way. When you actually live here, you can see it's not like that at all.